So who's behind this bare-knuckle campaign tactics down there? Raymond is a former Republican operative who served time for jamming Democratic phone lines up in New Hampshire in that Senate race. His new book is called How to Rig an Election, Confessions of a Republican Operative. Well, you're great to come on, Alan. Mike Paul's a public relations expert. He used to do op research for Senator Alphonse D'Amato. Boy, we got some tough guys on the show tonight. Let's go through and talk the dark arts of dirty tricks with you, Alan. First of all, tell me how you rigged that election, the phones up there, just so you did that little trick that got you in trouble.
Well, that was 2002 in the general election in New Hampshire, and we were hired, or my firm was hired by an agent of the RNC to essentially shut down all the phone lines coming, or the phone calls going in and out of Democratic phone banks on Election Day. And obviously anything you do on Election Day is geared to get out the vote. So what we were trying to do is disrupt lines of communication and shut down that effort. As far as South Carolina...
Did you do it, Alan?
Of course I did.
And did that cost Gene Shaheen the election?
No, I think it was, that election was close, but it wasn't that close. But it doesn't matter, because what it does is it tells your viewers that this stuff happens, it's out there, and in South Carolina, the one thing I would say to Senator McCain is welcome back, because this is not new tactics to him.
Okay, Mike, give me a confession if you've done something you're not especially proud of. Give us your bona fides as a master of the dark arts here.
Well, quite frankly, everything that I was involved with, I'm quite proud of. Chris, I want to start by saying that, you know, you said something in your opening statement that I think is very important here. If you're looking for truth and you're comfortable with the things that you find, then there's no problem. You know, if you're going to be transparent and accountable, and the day that you get involved with these issues, that you say, you know what, I'm going to do it from the perspective as though it was on air, then you're not going to have, quite frankly, some of the problems that Alan has. One of the things that I was involved with in Senator D'Amato's campaign was finding out that, for example, Bob Abrams at the time had paid his taxes late 5 times in a row. That's not dirty tricks. That's truth that the people needed to know.
That's great, Opry Stars. Let's talk about today right now. Let's talk about Bob Johnson. We have a full screen coming up here of the great, well, he's a billionaire. Maybe we think everybody's a billionaire. As great as Bob Johnson, who's head of BET. Here's something he said earlier this week to start with.
As an African American, I am, frankly, insulted that the Obama campaign would imply that we are so stupid that we would think Hillary and Bill Clinton, who have been deeply and emotionally involved in black issues, when Barack Obama was doing something in the neighborhood that I won't say what he was doing, but he said it in his book, when they have been involved.
Did you see that woman behind him laughing at what he said? It was pretty clear. It was an inside reference to the drug use. Here's what he said today, Mr. Johnson. I'm writing to apologize to you and your family personally for the uncalled, this is to Barack Obama, for the uncalled for comments I made at a recent Clinton event. In my zeal to support Senator Clinton, I made some very inappropriate remarks for which I'm truly sorry. I hope that you will accept this apology. Good luck on the campaign trail. Well, that was pretty grand. What do we make of this? Let me go back to Alan first of all. Did you think that Bob Johnson's comment, that allusion to the drug use, was what we'd call a dirty trick, or what would you call it?
Well, I think it speaks for itself, but more importantly, what it points to is a gaffe or a mistake by the Clinton campaign. And Senator Obama's campaign responded brilliantly, because what they were able to do was they were able to make the case to Democratic primary black female voters in South Carolina that they need to choose between their gender and their race. And then he was able to back off it fairly quickly, because he doesn't want to be the candidate of race. He's the candidate of hope and change. So I think that Mr. Johnson's comments were clearly meant. It speaks for themselves, but more importantly is the impact of that debate between Senator Clinton and Senator Obama over the last 10 days.
What do you make, let me switch to what's happening right now this week in South Carolina, Alan, or Mike Paul, which seems to be so much ground zero for tough, nasty campaigning starting back in 2000, where you saw how the Bush people were able to eradicate John McCain as a candidate back then with all kinds of actions under the table, some of them. What did you make of this push by this guy down there that John McCain sold out his country as a POW?
Well, Chris, if you don't mind, as an African-American, I first quickly want to respond to what Alan just said on the Obama thing. I think the big mistake there was mixing two issues, combining race with the support for Hillary and trying to tie those two together. I think if he would have talked about race and drug use in a separate fashion, I think it would have been absolutely open game. But the mixing of the two in that fashion was the mistake. As far
Mixing of what two things? What did he mix?
Well, for example, as he was trying to show, as he said, his zeal for Hillary, but then tying it almost as an aside by throwing in the drug use, I think it was inappropriate. If he would have said, look, this is a gentleman who had talked about drug use in his book and only talk about drug use as his message, I think it would have been accepted in a very different way.
Well, what do you think of that, Alan? Do you think that's is that fair game to use a guy's past drug use in a political campaign?
Well,
I guess it is.
If it's public record, anything that's public record is fair game. But it's not so much about is it fair, is it smart? And it wasn't smart at the time in the context of when it happened. It did
clearly
backfire.
boomeranged. Let me ask you about this thing going after. Why does John McCain's war record? You know, he makes me feel ashamed I didn't serve my country with more gallantry. I was in the Peace Corps. It makes me feel, God, this guy not only was flying jet planes attacking the enemy in Vietnam, he spent 5.5 years beaten to hell, beaten up in solitary for 2 years. All this horrible treatment. You can see he can't even hold his arms right now. He can't comb his hair. And they still go after him. What is the situation morally with people that keep doing this?
Well, I think it's interesting that this is happening, ironically, in the Belt states from the Bible perspective, you know, instead of some of the other states where it might have been accepted very differently. I think people are looking at it from a moral perspective and an ethical perspective. Look, the bottom line
Mike, where would it have been accepted to go after a guy's war record after all these years?
Well, I'm just trying to talk about other states where it wouldn't be as seen as as such a moral issue. Quite frankly, right here in New York, I think that there are some folks, and that's where he had trouble before 8 years ago, that'd be more than happy to go after him from that perspective. I think it's just as despicable. And I'm proud to say that, you know, look, you said in your opening statement that this man is an American hero, and he absolutely is an American hero. If I were working for his campaign, one of the things I would say is we need to get those third-party endorsees who were there with him, those who know about this torture firsthand, and also get his story back on the air so that people can be reminded of everything he went through.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Alan, your thoughts on this? It just seems we keep going back into the problem area here with people scratching at the old wound again. Let's go after John McCain as a POW.
Look, one thing is you have to remember, you know, people are in the trenches, and this is not about morality. Maybe it should be, but oftentimes it's not. It's about winning. And, you know, this is what it comes down to. And South Carolina is a place where you better have a thick skin because, you know, they play rough down there.
Yeah, but Alan, if it's only about winning, then why are we talking about these issues? Everyone knows that we're not playing tiddlywinks or playing in a sandbox. This obviously is politics. But the way in which you do it matters today. The way in which you talk about ethics and morality matters today in a campaign. And that's why some of these lessons are going to be learned the hard way.
I totally agree. I completely agree. But the fact of the matter is when you're down in the trenches like that, sometimes you lose your way, and these things happen. And that's not to excuse it. That's not to say that it's right. And we saw it happen in 2000 with Senator McCain. But again, you know, I think there has to be a separation when you're talking about these just as process between clearly there's right and there's wrong, and then there's what happens on the campaign trail.
I applaud you for coming on after serving your time. I'm always very appreciative because I figure so many people get away with bad stuff, and you got caught and you paid for a lot of people's sins. Thank you very much, Alan Raymond and Mike Paul.